Hi, today I'm going to talk to you about the 8th house in a horoscope. Now, how do you find where the 8th house is? Just locate where is your first house, the ascendant, and then you count that as number 1 and then move clockwise in the South Indian format of the horoscope. This will not work with the North Indian format because you go clockwise like this from Lagna. So wherever Lagna is, you will have the word LAG or you might have it as ASC representing ascendant. And this is actually the rising sign which we have dealt already with when we spoke on the first house. Now count clockwise from here and reach the 8th house. Now the 8th house is a sign that is placed on what we call the wrong axis of the first and 7th house. The first is you and the 7th is the other, and this particular house 8 is slightly twisted axis on this the 1-7 axis. So the 8th house, just because it is twisted away from the first house, you could guess what the 8th house means. The 8th house means the house of longevity and all the risks that are there in life. In one word, if you want to describe the 8th house, it is basically the house of the unexpected, things that happen all of a sudden. We always used to hearing this term when people pass away. Most people in India say he has been living for a long time, then suddenly he passed away. Now that's how death happens. It happens all of a sudden. So living is a long-term process, whereas death itself is usually happens in a second. So the 8th house is the Ayush Sthana, or the life that, or the house that deals with the longevity. You can remember this by remembering that oxygen which gives life to all of us on this planet has the valency number 8 on the periodic table that we studied in chemistry classes. And now the 8th house primarily deals with the unexpected. So it includes accidents, it includes surgery, it includes you can say defeat, and it includes anything where the surprise element was there. So on the positive side we have lottery, because lottery, a very poor and then suddenly a lottery win makes you a very rich person. It happens all of a sudden. You're very poor and then you inherit something from somebody because that person has passed away, and then your lifestyle changes, you become very rich, and therefore inheritance and all the gains that you get out of a will, usually associated with the death of another person, is also associated with the 8th house. So the 8th house is not all that bad. It has the possibility of a solution to, for example, surgery, as you know, is not all the time bad. Most of the time the doctors get it right, and that means you live longer after a successful surgery. So that's good news. The important aspect of the 8th house is that it is the 12th house from the 9th house. The 9th house is the house of fortune, and the 12th is usually related to all the losses, and therefore if you say that the 8th house is the 12th from the 9th, it means the 8th house is the loss of the 9th, loss of fortune or loss of the anything concerning the 9th. So planets placed here have to be given a lot of importance because it tends to bring decline to your fortune in most cases. Now, for example, if Sun occupies the 8th house, and if you know that, if you remember that the Sun is also dealing with the basic significator of your father, and if Sun is in the 8th house, it indicates the possibility of having a short, your father could pass away early in life. Or if Sun, the significator of vision is or the eyesight is in the 8th house, it means that you could have problems with your eyesight, because from here Sun looks at the 2nd house, that is called the house of the eyesight, or it is called the Netra Sthana. So If moon is in the 8th house, it can give you danger in ponds, lakes, seas and rivers, etc. And the moon in the 8th is known to make a person have a higher level of ESP, extrasensory perceptions, and because the moon is the mind, this person can think differently, or may not be typical, the way normally people think. Instead of that, he could turn psychic, or he would be engaged in the occult matters, trying to read the future and see the future, etc. When Mars is in the 8th house, it brings about difficulties with children, and also in case it happens, if this condition is there in the chart of a lady, then it also indicates a troubled marriage, because Mars in the 8th is believed to cause a dosha or a blemish in matters of marriage. It turns the horoscope into a Manglic horoscope, except if Mars is along with a benefic planet. If Mars is with a benefic planet, then this dosha is cancelled. So it's very important to know that the planet's place in the 8th is not the final, the one that decides what happens to the 8th house. The 8th lord, for example, could be in a good house, could be dignified, and that could improve the situations of the 8th house. Maharishi Parashara gives a very important rule to us, saying that if the planet ruling the 8th house is in a Kendra, meaning 1, 4, 7, 10 houses, use the Bhava chart for this, do not use the Rasi chart, because the Bhava chart gives you the exact positions of the planets as far as the houses goes. And if the 8th lord is in the houses 1, 4, 7, 10, then Maharishi Parashara, the father of Vedic astrology, promises long life. But in a later sloka, he also reminds us that the planet's place in the 8th house could alter this by, for example, if you have malefic sitting in the 8th house, then it could make the 8th house weak. So, if Jupiter is in the 8th house, then it gives long life. So remember this. Any benefic planet sitting in the 8th house tries to extend your longevity, especially Jupiter. And if Jupiter is in the 8th house, and if that same Jupiter is exalted in very strong, then surely that this Jupiter will give you a lifespan of minimum 80 years, and it could make you a very good person, devote, etc., a very good character. Whereas if the same Jupiter in the 8th is debilitated, or what we call as Nicha or Nicham, in that case the person could turn sinful and the longevity might get reduced to less than 65. Similarly, if Rahu or Ketu occupies the 8th house, then there is a risk when a person is 32 years old, also at 45, and then at 60. So these are the risk ages. So if it is Rahu and Ketu are afflicted by malefic planets, then the longevity is under question when the person is 32 years old. If benefics are along with this Rahu and Ketu, or Rahu or Ketu in the 8th house, then the danger is expected around the age of 45. If the 8th lord is very weak and very badly placed, and then if you have Rahu or Ketu in the 8th house, then the risk in life will be at the age of 60. So we get a lot of clues about longevity and lifespan by knowing the conditions of the 8th house. If the 8th house is occupied by benefics, and if the 8th lord is also dignified and very well placed, then it definitely gives a very long life. There are other rules for longevity. One of them is a little looks like an exception, because if Saturn is in the 8th house, it extends longevity and gives a longevity of 75 years. And if the Lord of the 8th is very well placed, exalted, and in benefic houses, in Kendra, etc., and then you have Saturn in the 8th, it gives you a very long life, definitely beyond the age of 85. So, coming to the aspects of the Dasha and Bhukti, I would like to remind you that planets placed in the 8th house during the Dasha and the Bhukti, I am referring to the planetary periods, they are likely to give you a lot of anxieties, disappointments, etc. Because the 8th house is considered a Dushtana, or a very unfavorable house when it comes to the planetary periods. For example, Mars in the 8th, during the time when Mars Dasha is on, or the sub-period of Mars is on, the person develops urinary infections repeatedly and has problems with the kidneys. And if Sun is here, then also almost similar things are expected, because the 8th house also deals with food poisoning and all those things that are related to the poison effect, like dysentery and infections of the stomach, infections of the alimentary canal, etc. So, if the planet which is placed in the 8th house is going to rule you, you will have to put in a lot of prayers, and you will have to put in a lot of charity during such periods. So, with this few words, we have come to the end of the description of the 8th house, and in the next episode, we will be covering the next house, which is the 9th house. So, thank you so much.